Excuse me, we are looking for a farm. Could you tell me the way to the nearest settlement?
Keep heading east on this trail. It's about a day's ride.
The New Mexico Territory, 1878. The sun hung high, its blinding light reflecting off the white dust of the canyons, creating a sense of eternal, parching silence. The Silver Castle Ranch presented itself as a fortified, squat building of adobe brick, looking more like a fort than a home. Disorder, neglect, and weariness reigned here. Jack Hawk, the ranch owner, was a tall, severe man whose face seemed carved from stone. His life consisted of hard labor, cattle, and a silent, unbearable grief following his wife's death. He sought no comfort and lived with the firm conviction that his existence would forever be solitary and bitter. On the soul-creaking wagon arriving from a distance, Sarah Wallace appeared. She was a mail-order bride, sent from Kansas to a certain Mr. Blake. Sarah, dressed in a traveling gown that seemed far too refined for the harsh locale, felt her heart clench at the sight of the ranch. Jack met her, leaning against the doorframe. In his eyes was only emptiness and exhaustion. Sarah, gathering all her resolve, explained that she had arrived in response to an advertisement, looking for Mr. Blake. Jack, unmoving, informed her that she had the wrong address. Mr. Blake lived 2 days' journey away. He had not been expecting her, had not ordered her, and had no reason to keep her. Sarah, confronted by his inflexibility, realized she was trapped. The wagon had immediately departed, and around her was nothing but desert and lonely canyons. She pleaded with Jack for a night's shelter until an opportunity for travel arose. Jack, yielding to her desperation, nodded permission for her to enter. The Hawk home was a museum of dereliction. A thick layer of dust, dirty dishes, a floor that had not seen a mop, and the smell of stale food. On a low stool by the hearth sat a small boy, Finn, about 5 years old. He wore clothes too large for him, and his light hair was matted. He did not take his gaze off the newcomer in the house. While Jack went to prepare a sleeping space in the barn, Finn slowly approached Sarah. He did not speak, but his eyes, full of sorrow, studied her. Then Finn's tiny hand reached out and grasped the hem of her skirt. Without looking up, he pressed himself against her. In that moment, which lasted only an instant, Sarah felt her own broken heart respond to the desperate need of the child. Jack, observing the scene from the doorway, froze. For the first time in a long while, his stern face twisted with an emotion that resembled pain. The morning brought renewed heat, but no resolution. Jack, unable to devise a way to send Sarah back, ordered her to remain in the guest room until he could find an opportunity for her departure. He avoided meeting her eyes and continued to speak in curt, dry sentences. The ranch was a mirror of his life. It desperately needed repair, yet Jack seemed to have lost the will to care for anything but his cattle. Sarah accepted the challenge. She could not sit idle. Her hands, though unaccustomed to heavy labor, began methodically bringing order to the house. She cleaned, scrubbed, mended, and cooked. Finn, who had previously been a silent observer, became her constant shadow. He did not speak to her, but followed her everywhere. He brought her old, broken toys, displaying them in a gesture of unspoken trust. Sarah responded to his silent communication with patience and tenderness. She cleaned his clothing, brushed his hair, and recited to him by memory fragments of the children's tales she remembered. Jack noticed these changes. He observed that Finn cried less frequently at night, that he could even manage a smile for Sarah. Initially, Jack reacted with distrust and irritation, fearing that the presence of an unfamiliar woman who would inevitably leave would only inflict more pain upon his son. He tried to remain detached, but his actions betrayed him. He repaired the leaky gutter that Sarah had mentioned, and added extra coal to the stove when she was cooking. He did these things silently, as if repairing not the house, but his own conscience. One afternoon, while cleaning the attic, Sarah found an old box full of children's drawings. All of them depicted a house, a sun, and 3 figures: a man, a woman, and a child. Yet, in all the recent drawings, the figure of the woman was either crossed out or missing entirely. Sarah understood that Finn's grief was profound, and that he needed her more than Mr. Blake ever did. That same evening, Jack, sitting in the shadow of the porch, noticed Sarah darning Finn's shirt. He approached her, and, breaking the long silence, he said, "Finn had a mother. She died in childbirth." He said nothing more, but for the first time in a long while, he shared his pain with her. Sarah did not reply. She only pressed Finn's shirt to her chest, signaling that she had heard and understood him. Between them, a fragile truce was established, founded upon a shared concern for the child. Sarah felt her attachment to Finn, and her growing, though unstated respect for Jack, who, despite his severity, was an honorable man, solidifying. She decided to stay, at least for a while, until Finn grew stronger. Jack did not object, but he cautioned her. Their arrangement was temporary, and there would be nothing between them beyond a working relationship. While cleaning, Sarah discovered a small locked box in an old cabinet. Curiosity took over. She forced the lock. Inside, she found a stack of old newspaper clippings. It was criminal news, reports on the search for a certain Logan Wallace, a horse trader accused of fraud and murder in the territory of Texas. In one of the photographs, she recognized a face. It was Logan Wallace, and he bore a striking resemblance to the estranged husband she had fled from. Beside the clippings lay a notebook. Tucked inside, among Jack's financial entries, were Finn's old baptism record and a birth certificate. Sarah, shocked, read the names. Finn was not Jack Hawk's son, but Logan Wallace's. The birth certificate stated that Finn was born to Logan Wallace and a certain Mary Hawk, Jack's sister. Jack, it appeared, had taken Finn in after his sister's death and Wallace's escape. Sarah realized that Jack lived in constant fear that Finn's true father would return to claim the child, or that the truth about his criminal past would be exposed. This was why Jack so intensely avoided strangers, and why he had been so quick to dismiss the mail-order bride. She immediately closed the box, but she could not hide her distress. That same evening, Jack, returning from the pasture, saw her strained face. He understood that she had discovered his secret. He approached her, his face turning to stone once more, and his hand instinctively rested on his old revolver. He asked, without unnecessary words, if she had seen it. Sarah, meeting his gaze, nodded. He replied that Wallace had been his brother-in-law, a criminal. He declared that he would not allow Finn to learn the truth about his father, nor would he allow Wallace to return to take the child. Sarah, grasping the depth of his struggle, did not reveal her own secret. Her surname was Wallace, and she too had fled from Logan Wallace. Both of them were fugitives, but their secrets pulled them in different directions. The relationship between Sarah and Jack transitioned into a new phase. They were allies, bound by a shared secret and a common goal: to protect Finn. They began to speak of Logan Wallace, his character, and his connections. Sarah, without revealing she was his wife, described Wallace's nature to Jack, detailing his maniacal obsession with property and his unpredictable brutality. Meanwhile, a new man appeared at the ranch. This was Robert King, who introduced himself as a horse trader. He was outwardly friendly, excessively smiles, and too persistently interested in Jack's breeding stock. Jack mistrusted him, sensing a predatory wariness in his eyes. Sarah also felt that something was amiss. The next day, while Jack was away at the distant pastures, King remained at the ranch. Finn, playing in the barn, approached King and showed him an old, worn doll that Sarah had given him. King, instead of smiling, stared intently at the child. His hand automatically reached toward his neck, where an old, thin scar, a distinguishing mark Sarah remembered from stories about Wallace's associate, was visible beneath his shirt. Sarah realized that King was no horse trader, but a scout sent by Wallace. She had to warn Jack. She quickly saddled the fastest horse and, without leaving a note, raced into the desert to intercept Jack. She found him late that evening, just as the sun was setting behind the canyons. Gasping for breath, she told Jack that King was Wallace's man and that he was not looking for cattle, but for Finn. Jack, wasting no time on questions, understood that she was right. They decided not to return to the ranch immediately, so as not to endanger Finn. They made camp in a remote, sheltered canyon. During the brief rest, as night fell upon the desert, Sarah finally revealed her last, most terrifying secret to Jack. She told him her surname was Wallace, and that Logan Wallace was her former husband. She had run from him with money that she hoped would help her start a new life. She told Jack that she knew Wallace, and he would never stop. If he found her there, he would kill them both to take his son. Jack looked at her. They were now completely equal. Both were fugitives. Both were victims of the same man. His anger and his fear vanished, replaced by resolve. They began to devise a plan to protect the ranch and the child. The scene shifted to the ranch. King, having found neither Jack nor Sarah, realized his cover was blown. He gathered his men who had been hiding in the canyons and surrounded the ranch house. Finn, locked inside the house, peered through the dusty window. He saw the armed men, and fear seized him. Jack and Sarah returned at dawn. They utilized the complex layout of the canyons and cunning tactics to bypass King's men. Jack slipped into the barn, where he retrieved explosives, while Sarah crept into the house to secure Finn. King, seeing his plan unravel, decided to torch the ranch to smoke them out. Fire instantly engulfed the dry adobe walls. Smoke streamed across the canyons, carrying with it the smell of burning wood and hopelessness. Sarah found Finn in his room. The boy sat on the floor, clutching the old, broken toy she had given him. At the sight of Sarah, he threw himself at her, hugging her tightly. Sarah snatched him up, but the path to the door was blocked by the blaze. Jack, using a diversionary tactic, detonated the barn. The explosion shook the ground. In the ensuing chaos, he scrambled toward the house and saw Sarah attempting to escape through a window. He helped them out. The three of them fled the burning house, pursued by King's men. The confrontation took place at the edge of the canyon. Jack and Sarah worked as a single unit, exploiting their knowledge of the terrain and the element of surprise. At the crucial moment, when King aimed his rifle at Jack, Sarah, creating a distraction, hurled a burning piece of wood at him. This was enough for Jack to disarm him. Robert King and his men were arrested. Jack and Sarah, exhausted, watched as the ranch burned. It was destroyed, but the child was safe. For the first time, they could breathe freely. Following King's arrest, Jack and Sarah, having secured guarantees of safety from the authorities, remained on the ashes of the Silver Castle Ranch. The house was gone, but the land and the livestock remained. They began the arduous process of rebuilding the ranch, working side by side as equal partners. The shared labor, taxing yet purposeful, became a silent testament to their commitment, forging a bond stronger than any hardship. Finn, who had endured the terror, finally began to thaw. His silence, a heavy shroud since his mother's death, finally lifted. He started to speak. His first word, addressed to Sarah, was "Mama," and to Jack, "Papa." These simple words, spoken amidst the desolate remnants of the ranch house, became the foundational stones of their new home. His quiet laughter began to echo where only the wind's mournful sound had been heard before, signaling the return of light. Through the following months, the ranch was rebuilt, no longer as a fortress hardened against the world, but as a genuine, comfortable home. It rose anew, standing upon the same scarred ground, but now it was bright and filled with life. The adobe walls whispered not of past grief, but of sweat and shared effort. Finn, who had endured the terror, finally began to thaw. His silence, a heavy shroud since his mother's death, finally lifted. He started to speak. His first word, addressed to Sarah, was Mana, and to Jack, Papa. These simple words, spoken amidst the desolate remnants of the ranch house, became the foundational stones of their new home. His quiet laughter began to echo where only the wind's mournful sound had been heard before, signaling the return of light. Through the following months, the ranch was rebuilt, no longer as a fortress hardened against the world, but as a genuine, comfortable home. It rose anew, standing upon the same scarred ground, but now it was bright and filled with life. The adobe walls whispered not of past grief, but of sweat and shared effort. Jack and Sarah stood on the rebuilt porch, watching Finn play with a new puppy, a small, vibrant addition to their quiet, healing world. The sun was setting, casting long, peaceful shadows across the courtyard. Jack took Sarah's hand, his calloused fingers closing around hers. He acknowledged that her husband, Logan Wallace, would not abandon his attempts at revenge. Yet this acknowledgment carried no fear, only a deep, settled resolve. The weight of his guilt and the shadow of his sister's death had finally lifted. Finn, he stated with unwavering certainty, was his son. Sarah, he affirmed, was his wife. This was not a question or a request, but a declaration of permanent truth. Sarah, finally free from fear and the burden of her lie, looked into his eyes. Her escape had led her to this unexpected, desolate place, to this stern, grieving man. She admitted that she had arrived at the wrong address, to a stranger's house. She should not have stayed. But she had remained, and now, she declared, she would not leave. They decided to marry. Their wedding was a simple, quiet ceremony, set against the backdrop of the rising sun in the desert. A local preacher, understanding their extraordinary journey, performed the service on the porch of the newly constructed home. Finn stood close by, dressed in a new, small suit, holding the hand of both adults. He was the witness to their love and their shared, chosen future. They remained at the ranch. The Silver Castle was no longer a fortress defined by loss and secrecy, but a home built on truth, courage, and the powerful, enduring love they had found in the heart of the desert. If this tale of enduring spirit and a family forged in the fire of the frontier resonated with you, subscribe to Dust and Devotion Tales for more unforgettable stories of hardship, hope, and love in the Wild West.